I am going to declare us live. What's up, everybody? Awesemo.com 230 Golf Show, but it's a major edition. Doesn't feel like it, but it is. I'm Ben Reza, here with the man, fantasy golf man, Tim Frank. We made it barely through Trinity Forest. That is the worst event. I know I say that like every other week. That is the worst course I've ever seen. Get it out.
Very, very bad. Just get it out of here. That's just a bad event. I don't remember even the previous course. I think TPC Four Seasons wasn't great, but I think it's better than Trinity Forest. My man Scott Piercy goes bogey free for 72 holes, still doesn't win. I don't know what that even says about the course, but yeah, I'm ready to move past. It's like it couldn't be a worse tune-up for Bethpage either, because it's completely the opposite type of track. Birdie fest, drive it anywhere. Yeah,
Anywhere.
literally anywhere. So yeah, I don't know what you could take from that coming into this week, but not much. So yeah, it's a terrible event to lead into a major.
Just dumb. I shouldn't complain. I had a good week, which is always welcome, but my God, that Effie Barnrat gained 14 strokes putting. So we have that to break down. I'm glad we get to turn the page. Obviously, Bethpage Black. For those of you who have played it out there, it is brutal. Public course, so come on up and check it out. It's going to be a real test. There's no doubt. It's soaked, I'm sure. It's been raining nonstop in New York. But this is, like you said, a totally different animal. It's a monster field. Basically, everyone minus JT now because he has withdrawn. Where do you want to start? You want to start with the course? Because obviously that's going to be a big, big thing. How do we break this down?
Yeah, so it's 7,400 plus yard par 70, that's just super long, especially it's been raining, as you mentioned. So the course is going to be soft, which will make it play even longer. So I'm putting a pretty big emphasis on driving distance, but I also think that you need to be able to be somewhat accurate. So, strokes gained off the tee or total driving, guys like Rom, DJ, guys that can get out there with some accuracy. I think that's going to be huge. Because I don't think this is a course you really want to be playing from the rough. I think you need distance, but you got to be able to hit the fairway as well. So we've seen the course a couple times, 2016 Barclays, 2012 Barclays, and then 2 U.S. Opens. I think it's going to play tough, not quite like a U.S. Open, but I think it'll be pretty difficult because even at the Barclays, we saw it as one of the more difficult tracks on tour. So yeah, I'm looking for tough scoring environment. And guys that are long, but that can also hit the fairway.
Yeah, I think that's the first thing when I started this week was we've seen it play for U.S. Opens. We've seen it play for FedEx. What was the Barclays? Now that's the Northern Trust. I have a feeling, I think most people are on that consensus that it's going to mirror more of what the Barclays setup is going to be. I doubt they make it overly punishing. It'll be probably a pretty fair test. It's going to be tough. There's no doubt. But I don't think they're going to, make the rough where it's if you're off the fairway, you're in huge trouble. And some of the U.S. Open scores, obviously, you can win it, over par. I don't think we see it there. Single digits, maybe like minus 10-esque if someone gets going. But it's long. It's soaked. Maybe that'll help for the long irons. We're obviously going to get into all that. But yeah, I mean, with majors, we say the same thing every time. We have a loaded field, so you're going to have options no matter what you're really looking to. It's not like we have a big gap where it's like, oh, we have DJ and then the next guy's like Leishman. Obviously, we have every single big name. Are you taking kind of a blueprint for a specific type of golfer, or do you think any type can kind of excel?
I'm probably not going to be playing many of the shorter hitters, but and guys that really spray the ball. So yeah, really just strokes gained off the tee. Guys at least have some length and can hit the fairways. But I try not to get too bogged down in course fit or like one type of golfer because elite golfers, a guy like Molinari, who may not fit the course, they can still go well here. So I try to not limit myself too much. But when we get down into the punt type range, it's like, well, yeah, maybe I'll X out the Brian Gay, the Jim Furyk types, the guys that just really have zero length. But for the most part, I don't like to limit myself too much by really getting pigeonholed into one small type of golfer.
Yeah, I agree completely. Up top, like I don't care what course. Yeah, maybe this fits better for DJ than a shorter hitter up there, but I'm not ruling out any of them. As we work down, it's going to become more important. Obviously, some of those guys, they don't have the all-around game to compete. But dare I say, I can't believe I have to say this. We kick off the pricing with Tiger Woods, 11-3. What a world. Him, DJ, Rory, Brooks. Those are the only four now that JT has gone over 10K. I never thought I would ever say that. I'm not going to lie. Can you believe it?
It's crazy to me. I think everything's driven by the betting market, and with Tiger winning the Masters and people loving to bet him, I just feel like the bookies are just kind of making a stand, and probably pricing him a little bit conservatively, I guess would be the word. They don't want to get beat by Tiger, I don't think, and I think that's reflected in his DraftKings price. So to me, he's overpriced. I guess he'd be appropriately priced based on the Vegas odds, but I think those are a little out of whack just based on kind of public perception. So yeah, I'm not ready to put Tiger in the range with DJ, with Rory, with Brooks. So to me, he's overpriced. I don't like him at all this week.
I have, let me preface this. I may sound hot takey throughout this show. Obviously, these guys are still world class, but I have absolutely even if I built 500 lineups this week, I would have 0% Tiger. I just have no interest at that price. There's nothing that will convince me that there's a reason to go up there, unless you think that he's not going to be that highly owned. And Brooks is there, and I get it, but there's so many other options at a discounted price. Clearly the guy is playing well. I think we all know that. I'm not sure that this is a spot. He has not played since the Masters. I don't love that either. It's cold. Just a lot of things for me. Don't point to Tiger, but I would have said that at the Masters, so take it for what it's worth. The guy obviously I want to get into is Brooks because, this guy is a major killer. There's no doubt. I have to give him respect. I rarely play him. It's going to be popular. I guess what I'll just ask is, you get the savings if you take him over guys like Rory and DJ. Are you apt to do that, or would you rather go with one of the two kind of big guns?
I think this week I'm probably more apt to go with DJ and Rory. It almost feels like the big game hunter, the major killer is getting played up so much that, I don't know what to make of the fact that he seems to play well in majors, but now I'm almost to the point where I don't want to play him in majors just because I feel like everyone's going to be on him, and I'll take him in the regular tournaments because I feel like it's going to even out, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, I feel like 10 years from now, he'll slow down on the majors and win some of these regular events more often. I think that's just going to bring ownership because people think, wow, he just shows up to majors and he's a lock for a top 5. We know that's not true. He's great. I can't really say anything against him, but for me, I'll probably go with DJ or Rory over him. Probably Rory for me, just because the ball striking has been outrageous. 2.2 strokes off the tee and on approach. That's just lapping everybody on tour. Corey Connors is second in that stat at 1.4. Yeah, well, it's egregious that Corey Connors is second. It's all buoyed off of that one event where he just was out of his mind. But yeah, he's like 50% better off the tee and on approach than like the second best player on tour. And I think this is a great setup for him. Obviously, we talked about the need for total driving. He's just had a great year. So I love Rory this week. I do like DJ as well. Definitely am going with those two over Brooks and hoping that Brooks, garners a lot of ownership due to the fact that he's the major killer. So
I'm with you. I obviously in majors, you don't have to start with any of these guys. I'm going to have plenty of lineups that are just 9K dudes, a couple of them. But if I do go up top, I think DJ is the guy for me. Rory, you don't have to sell me hard on that. I usually prefer to start with him, but what's there to say about DJ? I feel like, even at the Masters, second, didn't feel like he was second. Didn't even feel like he was in the tournament, to be honest. That wasn't a factor until he was. Obviously has the length, playing well quietly. I think that if things were shifted a little differently, maybe the masses would be more gravitated. But as we have it, Brooks last week played at that joke of a course, which means literally nothing. But it's nice to see that people are going to flood to him even more because he played well. Everyone knows how good he is in the Masters. I'm going to be more apt to kind of take that, contrarian approach. And hopefully I get a discount on DJ. Like, I will take that and live with the results. but Brooks is dangerously scary. There's no doubt. To me, though, the 10K range, obviously it's only 4 guys, not the most interesting. The 9K range, though, this is where I think getting it right is key, because to me, you have 4 or 5 guys that you could start lineups with. Obviously, Rose kicks it off, goes right down to Jason Day at flat 9K. What do you make of this range? Is there one guy that stands out, or are you going to mix and match?
Probably mix and match. I think I'm with you. I think a lot of lineups will start in this range. Definitely like Rose at 9,900, bounced back really well at Wells Fargo with the third, struck the ball well. He seems to just kind of always be a forgotten guy. And I could see that happening this week where he comes in at maybe lower ownership than he should. Great all around game. I think sets up well here. I think Rahm is interesting with the way that he can drive the ball. Still worry about his temperament under tough conditions. So, when it goes sideways for Rahm, he kind of we've seen him lose it a little bit, and that's concerning. And Fowler, I really haven't been on Fowler much at all this year, because the ball striking was a little shaky to start the season off, even though he had really good finishes. But the ball striking has seemed to come around a little bit the last few starts. And I like that. I like, he's got a great all-around game, like we've always said. Probably the best short game on tour. And that's going to be important this week. Anytime it's a tough scoring environment, you're going to need some around the green game. I don't think that'll be, any different this week. So yeah, a lot of options. Rose and Fowler are probably my 2 favorites. Rahm, I really like the way the course sets up for him. Concerned about his temperament, though, at a tough course.
Yeah, Rahm's a guy that if I think that it's going to be somewhat gettable, not that it's going to be easy, but like if it's more, okay, Barclays-esque, I like him a lot. If it's US Open-esque, no interest, because he's not made for that yet. To grind it out, sometimes getting a bogey is okay. Sometimes it's good, honestly. And that's what I love about Ricky. He has some blow-up holes here or there, but he always kind of holds it together. Rahm is the opposite of that. In this range, though, having said that, those are my 2 favorite. I love Ricky this week. Great price, playing well. Across the board, he's not just bailing himself out with the putter. He's striking it good enough. And he's one of the few guys that he doesn't need to strike it as good as everybody else, because he's that good around the green, kind of like Day. Like, they just make more putts than most. Now, putting's highly variant. We know that. POA, I don't know. These POA greens, who knows? DJ's the only one that seems to like them, but that's neither here nor there. The guy I want to ask you about, though, is another, just one of these kryptonites for me, is Xander. He's gaining a ton of steam. Society in general, even when I'm out just in public, people are talking about Xander. They don't even know golf. Do you have any interest in Xander? What do you make of this guy?
It's hard to say. I don't have any interest, but like we said, this is just a loaded range, and I think there's other guys that I prefer to him. He does seem to be picking up steam. If he's going to be chalky, I don't have any problem fading him. I mean, we didn't even talk about Fleetwood. I like him as well. But yeah, Xander, it seems like in the majors, if you went like Brooks, Xander, Louis, you should win $1 million at some point. Like, he's just 3 guys that just seem to show up at majors. Yeah, I mean, he's been super impressive, but this is just a loaded range. And I think there's other guys that I prefer over him, especially if he's going to come in at higher ownership than some of these other dudes.
It is amazing. There's a handful of players. Brooks is obviously the best of them, but even when you look at Finau, who we're going to get to, it's like their year hasn't been great, but my God, at the Masters in particular, they've shown up, and they seem to show up in these majors. It's an odd thing. I mostly think it's noise somewhat. Like, maybe there's something to it, but at the same time, like, what is that? So I'm going to let ownership dictate. Xander in particular, it's more the opportunity cost. Jason Day's right there, elite world-class scrambler, which I think is important. Here, the soft conditions should mitigate some of that spraying. I'm more apt to do that. Or, the perfect segue to kick off the 8K range, I'm going to have some Bryson. I know he's not playing great, but he's still consistently gaining off the tee. A couple months, late 2018, he was the best player in the world for a nice stretch. Obviously, he cooled down, as we knew he would, but I'm going right back to him. I don't worry about the Heritage results. That's another tournament. It has nothing to do with this. What about your boy Bryson? And any interest there as we work down?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of concerns with Bryson, but I think he's like the ultimate tournament play. 8,900 seems somewhat underpriced, not for his form, but just for, like you alluded to, what we saw at the beginning of the season, where he looked like one of the best players on tour. He's had a few weeks off, which I think for him might be a good thing because he wasn't playing all that great. And maybe he bounces back and he found something with a few weeks off. But yeah, you got to love his upside. It feels like at 8,900, you get a guy that could definitely win this tournament. And maybe is a little underpriced, but I don't think the ownership will be there. And I think that's what's maybe the most appealing thing with Bryson is he has huge upside, and you're gonna get him at, I would guess, fairly low ownership. So yeah, I like him. But hard to feel too confident in him because he's struggled. But I think a few weeks off may help. Not enough, a lot of other guys in this upper 8 range that I love, honestly, besides him. Finau, obviously, of course, should set up well for him. And, like Xander, like Brooks seems to just show up in the majors. Hasn't had a great season, but yeah, it was awesome at the Masters. So should set up well for him. But I don't know. The upper 8 range I'm not in love with. I think once we get down around the Paul Casey range, I think that's where there's some really good plays. But yeah, not in love with any of these guys up here.
You weren't encouraged by the 29th at the Byron Nelson for Spieth? Just hot 6 strokes, keen putting, lost everywhere else.
No, that guy is just. I honestly wished he would have finished like T4 or something.
Just fade him even more, get
just
that
so
ownership up.
More people would play him. Yeah, here where you have to drive the ball well, I think he's going to struggle mightily. I think people are pretty sure he sucks now. I don't see very many people going to Spieth this week.
No, he's more of an afterthought, I think, for just everyone at this point. But yeah, we'll kick it off. I'll pass it right back to you. I mean, I feel like this is your guy. I always say you boy, just in general, but Decky truly is your brand. And he is just, the stats still look good, but he's just not really contending week in and week out. Now you get a bigger buffer here. You don't need him to, when he's 11,000, you're looking for obviously a top finish. 8,500, you have some wiggle room. But man, Decky quietly is, I don't want to say struggled. It's just he hasn't been full systems go. Do you like the spot here? I'm still kind of interested.
He struck it better last week than he did at Wells Fargo. That was, I guess it's something to build on. But yeah, I think I've traded Decky for Stenson. I think I've just gone down to Stenson,
the Iceman,
and in love with his ball striking the last like 5 or 6 weeks. But yeah, I mean, it's been kind of a spotty patch ever since the Masters. He hasn't played poorly, but the WGC match play, the Masters, didn't strike it well at all at Wells Fargo, and then bounced back a little bit. It's hard to say I hate him, but yeah, I don't. He's not one of my favorite plays. I was really riding him going into the Masters because the ball striking was on another level, and that's kind of cooled off a little bit. So yeah, I think he's a pass for me. There's just I wouldn't say he's a bad play, but I'm not as high on him as I was, say, 6 weeks ago.
So you prefer like the Cantlay Caseys of the world over him?
Yeah, 100% for sure.
Fair enough. I'm definitely higher on Decky than you are. I have no problem. Obviously, Paul Casey's a guy that it's been a bizarro year. He's missing cuts and winning tournaments, which is really not what we've seen. But we've seen the kind of variance, and I'm embracing that. Bounces back after the Masters when he burnt everyone at Wells Fargo, and he was great. 5.3 on the approach, gained more off the tee, just gaining everywhere. So there's no reason not to go back to him. Chad is saying Adam Scott as a sleeper. Interesting. Good long irons. Hasn't played a ton. I'm buying what people are selling. I think that's interesting. I don't mind taking some Scott and hoping that maybe he's going a little, he just hasn't been on the mind. There's a lot of guys who haven't played between the Masters and here, and I think that makes a difference in ownership.
Yeah, this is a tough spot because it seemed like, leading into the Masters, we just had a great feel for how everybody was playing. Everybody had a lot of events under their belt, a lot of shot link data. And then with this kind of strange compacted major season, it does seem a little weird. You haven't seen guys since the Masters, or maybe you've only seen them one time. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'll be going to Scott, but like you said, I mean, when he's played, he's had some good finishes and definitely a ball striker's course for sure.
Yeah, he's like I said, we haven't seen him, but good at if this is ridiculous. The players in the Masters are basically his last normal traditional events. Just not a lot of data recently, so we don't know. But with that adds maybe some value and some uncertainty. Before we kick off the 7K range, we got the two disturbing lefties. I'm glad they priced them together. Bubba and Phil, yay or nay? Both just full sicko lineup. Take them both and just burn your money.
No, I actually like Bubba a lot at 8K.
What am I missing? A lot of people I hear Bubba's name here and there. Sell me because I'm ugh.
So he's played at Bethpage 3 times. He has a 13th, a 10th, and an 18th. Now, I'm not a big course history guy, and these are, results from a while ago. But to me, we know that Bubba only plays well at Bubba courses. Like, there's certain places he hates, and he's awful, and there's certain places he likes, and he's great. I'm not going to say this is a course he loves, but he's played here 3 times and played well. So I have to think that he at least feels comfortable at this track. And we know it's a long course, and he's been really good off the tee, gaining almost a full stroke per round off of the tee. His last 2 stroke play events was a 12th at the Masters and a 4th at the Valspar. The only other starts he has mixed in are the Zurich and the match play, which who really cares about? So, 2 really good match play or stroke play results in his last 2 events, and a course that should fit. Of course, he's played well, so I like him.
All right.
I mean, yeah, I'll definitely have some Bubba this week.
I'll tell you, I looked at him obviously, and the irons really didn't inspire much. He has, he gains so much off the tee. He doesn't need to be great with the irons. I do worry a little, similar to Rahm, just not that it's temperament, but when Bubba doesn't like something or if the weather is ugly, sometimes, he just kind of pouts, I feel like, on the course, and he really doesn't love to grind it through. But there's no doubt, I read more into course history with him than almost anyone else on tour. When he likes a course, you're 100% light. It's repeatable. We've seen him win at the same spot multiple times. And the second part of it, and we're about to talk about him, he makes a great one-off of Sergio, who's going to be massively popular. I like Sergio like most people, but there's no doubt you're going to want to look whether maybe it's Bubba, maybe it's Stenson, maybe it's somebody else. If you want to get away from the masses, you're probably going to want to pivot in that range or pair him up with Sergio to try to be a little unique.
Yeah, for sure. People are going to flock to that 17-year-old course history with Sergio back at the 02 U.S. Open. They're really leaning on that this week. But, yeah, I mean, what's not to like about Sergio? 3 top 10s and 3 starts here, just comes in playing great. But I'm with you. I think you're going to need to find some pivots. I mentioned Stenson, who I love. I don't know. I guess he'll be owned, but probably won't be as owned, being that he's the same price as Sergio. But just the approach game, man. I keep going right back to that last 18 rounds, almost 27 strokes gained on approach. The irons have been fire. We know he's going to hit the fairway. I wish he would use his length, the length that he has, a little more. It seems like he lays back off the tee a lot, but I mean, the irons have been amazing. So we know he's going to be in the fairway, and he's been probably the best iron player on tour over the last, 8, 9, 10 weeks. Yeah, so I love him, especially if it's going to be playing difficult this week. So yeah, Stenson, Bubba, Sergio, and Stenson, I like all of them, but we might see Sergio at pretty high ownership this week.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And I get it. It's the difference here. I will say, just on a macro level, we saw Kuchar at the same price at the Masters, and everyone was talking about like, oh, you got to kind of just play him. The difference here, this is 156 people. I know there's 20 or so minions for PGA professionals who most likely get cut, but it's a lot harder to make this cut. Where the Masters, not that guys couldn't get cut, but the reward of taking a huge stand is mitigated. Because like, even if Kuchar didn't have it, he probably finds the weekend almost every time, because you only have to beat it's a much smaller field. So here, not necessarily just fade all the chalk, but you can get paid off. Sergio is certainly live to miss a cut. There's no doubt about that. I like him. I'm not saying I don't, but I just think you got to be aware of that if you do want to make pivots, the upside of that in terms of just damaging the field is a lot better at this type of full field event.
If
And it's
Sergio came out and shot 80 on
yeah,
Thursday, would anybody be surprised?
yeah.
I
And
would
then
not be
broke a
surprised.
club and then damaged a green and then
Exactly. Yeah,
attacked the
like
fan.
just starts
Like,
throwing the sand
yeah,
around in the bunker. Um,
yeah,
he almost seems like a guy that when he is chalk seems that seems to happen to. I don't know. There's no math behind that take, but yeah, I mean, Sergio is not a guy who's immune to going out and shooting 80, especially in tough conditions.
definitely not. The price tag makes him a very appealing thing. He's a great driver of the ball, but we have seen Sergio also just not have it. God, this is the next mini range is really you have Usti. It's amazing. Leishman is hurt, and I still feel like Usti's more likely to just randomly withdraw. Those two, and then Woodland. Woodland definitely piques my interest. I feel like he's not nearly as popular right now as I thought he would be. Another guy obviously has the length. Don't feel like the price is egregious in any way. I'm sure he's not going to be low owned, but consistently gains off the tee. The results have been somewhat middling, but I'm not asking for much. Find the weekend, make some birdies, and call it a week. Are you apt to go there, or is these type of guys just meh?
I don't love any of these guys. You can't play Woodland. This is a long course. You got to do the
It's
reverse
him and List.
psychology.
It's so true. Like it's so sick.
He can hit
Um,
it 350, but don't play him at long courses.
yep. Yeah, the Bombers that need to play at Heritage. Uh, Usti, I don't know.
Honestly, the only guy in the upper 7 range when I was messing around with lineups this morning and would get stuck with this range, I ended up going to Simpson, even though I don't love the course fit for him at all, but the results have been really good uh, with him. And yeah, there's just not a lot that I love in this range. Leishman, very scary coming off the WD. I'll definitely have some Moosey because, like we said, in majors, the guy just shows up. Kisner, I don't think this is the course for him. Woodland, not in love with. Definitely not playing Kokrak. This is the week we get paid off, I think. Finally.
We started to get it wherever he lost it was something. Let me bring it up. He lost a boatload of strokes putting at Wells Fargo 7.2. If he does that for another 2 years, we'll be back to even of what he should be doing. But I'm not going to be on Kokrak here. I prefer Webb Simpson as well, so that feels weird because I'm also not a Webb guy, and it's not a Webb course per se, but the price, the lack of ownership, and he really has made strides. Obviously, we know by now his improvements around the green and putting are not flukes. It's sustained. It's baked into kind of who he is as a player, and he really seems to be kind of just show up fifth at the Masters, 16th at the Players, quietly, like just doing his thing, strikes it well, and just can stick to his game plan. He doesn't need to be long off the tee, and he's long enough. These guys, even with no roll, he'll be fine. He can if the greens are receptive, his long irons will carry him through. So he makes certainly an interesting as we work down. Poulter, Sneds, Cam Smith types. I don't really have strong takes on any of these guys. Feel free if you do, but
no, not for me. I think RCB at 7,300 just seems underpriced. I think a lot of people will go there. Hasn't played great, but he's been consistent enough, and I think at 7,300 he can get it done. I don't know. Part of me wants to play Siwoo Kim.
oh wow, really?
So we'll go back to the Valero where he was fourth and really struck it well. Went to the Masters and was T21. Good finish for him there. And then he killed everybody at Heritage and missed the cut. But I mean, a guy that you want to embrace the volatility with, I don't know. He seems like this could be a spot for him. I really like Aaron Wise at 7,100. I feel like he might be your boy too this week. Last 2 weeks struck the ball great. He putted horribly last week at Byron Nelson, but I still think he gained probably around 6 strokes, I think, ball striking, so off the tee and on approach, and did the same thing at Wells Fargo, around 6 strokes off the tee and on approach. So he was good at the Masters, T17, good at Wells Fargo, T18, and he was T43 last week, but the ball striking is equally as good. He just didn't putt. So he's put together 3 good ball striking events. Really strong off the tee. I think this should set up well for him.
The low 7K range, I think there's actually a lot of options. I like it better than the mid. The guy I thought when you were mentioning, I thought you were going to talk about Sanjay Im, who I'm a little skeptical of. I'm not sure what to do. Form is starting to get a little murky, but still a talented guy. And obviously he got MDF'd last week. I don't know.
It turns out when you play 27 weeks in a row, you
You
sometimes
get tired?
get tired, yeah, and the results start to deteriorate a little bit.
Sad. Yeah, Bucket Hat Man, Joel Dahman, 7,300. Big step up. He's playing really well. I prefer RCB. God, then this is where I like, do I dare mention Keegan? Major winner Keegan Bradley. Norin is there, who I will say played better last week, but the irons were, this guy, I cannot get a read on him. 2 weeks ago, he gained 4.9 with the approach at Heritage, so I bought in last week. He lost 4.4 with the irons, but he was great off the tee and great putting again. So I still think as a very aggressive play, you can go to Norin. I've been slowly buying on him, but the stats aren't going to instill a ton of confidence. And then the last guy, you mentioned Wise. I'm with you. I'm going back to our old friend, Emiliano Grillo. Good at the Barclays here in 2016. I know there's just one event. We haven't seen him much. The ball striking should be there. Obviously, it's going to be about the flat stick, but POA, maybe it's the equalizer. I'm going to buy in. It's just that he can get around this course. He hasn't had a good result in majors, but to me, this is when I think about majors, I was talking about this morning with someone. You've got the Masters, which is like just a totally different feel. This kind of feels like a hybrid between the Players. This is definitely the most normal for a regular tour player. I feel
this
like
is a fake major.
It's kind of just a big tournament. I don't think it's that over. The U.S. Open, it's a crazy course. The British Open, you're in a different place, and the Masters, obviously, Augusta's a whole different animal as well. So, I think this is the one where you can see those kind of, I don't want to say run-of-the-mill tour players, but those types compete. And we've seen that with guys like Duffner and Keegan. And
right. I mean, if Keegan won here, it's not a real major.
Correct. That's one of the prerequisites. The last guy, I know I've mentioned a bunch here, Johnny Vegas. Yeah? Playing well.
Yes, he is playing well. I don't know. I feel like in a major, I don't know if I want to go to Vegas. I think I'd rather go with somebody with a little more pedigree. I mean, Vegas has been playing well, but I just don't think he's for me this week.
Fair enough. There are a lot of, one of my hardest tasks as I've been working through it this morning is sorting out this lower 7K range, because there's a lot of guys. I didn't even mention Benny On, who I don't know if he's still hurt. I'm probably not going to be going there too much. Fitzy is there as well. There's just a lot of bodies.
We'll have to hit up Hatchman on Twitter, who's
talking to him this
outside
morning.
Benny On's house in the bushes.
Like, come on, man. What?
Buying.
we need this. I assumed he was in touch with multiple family members, just breaking down the Benny news. So we'll have to see what the deal is with the injury. Chad is asking, as we work down, about Justin Harding, flat 7K. And as friend of the show, Nelson, just said, this guy is sun running with the putter. He gained 9 strokes with it last week. I'm not going there. I know he's had an impressive run. You going to your favorite South African?
No, not. Like you said, I mean, the putting is not sustainable. When you look back at some of the results, they look good on paper, but then you look at what kind of field they were in when he was winning and coming in a runner-up. No, I don't think I can get there with him.
Someone in chat, I just want to point this out, said, and they're actually 100% right, Norin is the Euro version of Spieth. It's hard to argue with that. That's disturbingly accurate. Well, okay, final guy in 7K, and then we can get to the egregious. Tommy Peters, my man. Thomas Peters, 7K. Played fine last week. We know the upside is there. We know the risk is there. That's not a question, but he's plenty long off the tee, can take any course apart. If it looks like it's not going to be brutal, he's similar to Rahm in that bucket. I want him to being able to score because he's going to go after it, no doubt.
Yeah, I love Peter. 7K,
Oh yeah,
very cheap. I think the T23 last week was a good sign. We've seen him compete in tough fields, big events. We've seen him fail in miserable European Tour events. So you kind of never know what you're going to get with him. Very similar to Rom. Either of those guys, they're like even money to like snap a club when things start going
yeah.
bad. But yeah, I like him. Just realize you're taking on risk with him. There's a lot of miscut equity, but he's got a lot of upside, a lot of scoring potential, ton of length on a course where you're going to need length.
He's I get suckered in because we've seen him time and time again show flashes. There's just a lot of risk, but at 7K, I mean,
Just
who
a sprinkle.
just a touch, just a little seasoning on the entree of losing a lot of money this week. Daniel, speaking of losing a lot of money, Daniel Berger kicking off sub 7. Before I do that, as I do every show, and it's more important this week because it is a major. If you haven't signed up to awesomeo.com and you want to, you can use the promo code JazzRaz. You get 50% off your first month. We have a ton of different packages, all different sports, not just golf, but golf is amazing. Long season. It's only the second major. Plenty of tournaments. We got projections, articles. Tim, as I say each and every week, your every beck and call in Slack. Jason Roslin, awesome. Everyone pitching in. So stop on by. Slack is great. It's worth the money on its own. But now we get to the egregious part. And Daniel Berger is a perfect name to start that off. No, I've been playing him, and it's been
He's
going all right.
been
But
he's like inching back. I know he gained 4.7 strokes with the ball striking last week. I don't know if I love him here. He seems to have a particular type of course that he plays well at, shorter
St.
Bermuda.
Jude, that's
St.
it.
Jude, yeah, anything in Memphis. Yes, I don't know if this is the track for him, but he's kind of inching back, but I don't think I'll get there. Um, you were the first one to call the Kyle Stanley comeback, and I think the Kyle Stanley comeback is in like full effect.
Kyle Stanley. Yep.
Yeah, I think he's a really good play this week. One of the few guys below 7K that I feel pretty confident in. The ball striking is coming back. The results are coming back. So yeah, I props to you for kind of figuring that out before everybody else.
Well, it was when you blind squirrel style. Some of
When you
these guys,
fire 5,000 lineups,
it's true. When you hang on to everyone, sometimes they happen to come back. But Kyle Stanley is trending upward. And as I said, I thought that the spot was good, particularly because the Masters, we couldn't see the strokes. So it was a blind guess of maybe he found something, maybe he didn't. Obviously, now Wells Fargo, he certainly found the irons. He putted really well, too. There's no doubt about it. That probably won't happen again. But this is the Kyle Stanley that we're used to seeing. And he's a much better player than most of the guys down here. So I'm interested in him. I'm going to go to the other side of the pond, though. Matt Wall is 6,700. Played really well in Europe. Should have won last week, blew it. And a guy we've seen here and there. Don't think he'll be overly popular, but, these are cheapies. And we've seen him, played well at the Players and API. Good player, good putter, can strike it well. Was in the PGA last year, obviously a different course, but 19th. I think he's a guy that I feel pretty good with making the cut, and that's all I'm really looking for down here.
Yeah, he's been solid. That field at the British Masters was pretty decent, so it wasn't like some of the terrible European Tour events.
Joburg Open.
And that wasn't the Joburg Open where
Sad.
Justin Harding has like the 9-time winner.
All the course records.
Yeah, we got to talk about Piercy and like what.
Oh, chat's already ahead of us. Yeah, let's get
What kind of chalk is Piercy? Is he bad chalk? Is he not as chalky as we think he's going to be and ends up being a good play? I'll just throw out the numbers. So he was second last week and didn't make a bogey. His prior start, he was third at, I think it was Harbor Town. And in those two events, he's gained 17 strokes with the ball striking, which is phenomenal. That's like in another world. So he's striking the ball amazing. It comes in with a second and a third, and he's 6,500. I don't know. Is he going to be like the 25% guy that misses the cut, or is it like everyone thinks Piercy's going to be bad chalk and he comes in at a tolerable ownership level and plays well. I'm struggling with this one.
So usually chalk. People ask all the time, like, who's going to be low owned up top? And it's like, well, relative, no one, because they all garner ownership. In the bottom, it's the opposite. Like, Piercy's going to be chalk down here, but I would be stunned if he's like Sergio level owned, because guys, you don't need to go down there with a lot of lineups. So he's going to be way higher owned than anyone else. I still don't think it's going to be massive chalk. Having said that, that is a long-winded answer. I'm going to use some Piercy, but I'm skeptical. I'm not going to lie. He's playing phenomenal. He's also putting much better than we normally see. And it's Scott Piercy. Like, more props to him. I was on him last week, but I think he's playing a little over his head. There's no doubt. This is a tough course. This is a major. I'm going to probably look to one-off him if it looks like he's going to be hovering around 20% owned.
Yeah, I mean, I'm leaning to not play him, but I feel like sometimes we think guys are going to be far more chalky than they are, and then Thursday morning you look at the ownership percentage and you're like, oh, well, I guess a lot of people faded him, but I mean, I'm just enamored with that ball striking. It's been so good. And granted, the two courses that he played, Trinity Garbage Dump and Harbor Town, you couldn't think of a different course, polar opposite from Bethpage Black, but gaining 17 strokes off the tee and on approach in 8 rounds is still amazing.
Incredible.
For 6,500. But like we said, never forget that it's Scott Piercy.
Scott Piercy had a major. Like, that's, and this is where it comes back. This is why golf is, I don't want to say unique, but there is a binary situation, because Scott Piercy, he has to, like anyone, if he misses the cut, you're in trouble. And I'm not sure how, and I don't know this, there's a lot of people smarter than me that try to quantify this stuff, how playing really well at those two courses impacts him making the cut here. Obviously, recent form is a thing, but those are different animals than what he's going to see here. He's going to be tested scrambling. He's going to be tested putting. Spoiler alert, he's not going to not make a bogey in 72 holes. He's much more likely to not make a birdie in 36 holes. I guarantee you that. Then the last question I have is, if you don't want to play him, you need probably a one-off. So who is that guy? To me, it's Julian Surrey, playing well, came back from injury, and is slowly he's in form. He's an American, so obviously it's not a huge deal for him. I think he's a New Yorker, actually.
So he has a spine.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. He was born. It's a transplant, Brooks style. I'm very, very comfortable going to him if you don't want to use Piercy. And I want to be clear, I'm going to use some. It's not like a plug and play by any stretch for me.
So does Piercy have like bogey regression coming since he didn't make one last week? He's got to make like 16 of them or something this week.
Pure. Piercy's going to start like 3 over through 2, and everyone is going to be, Twitter is just going to be broken.
He's going to have the HV3 start from the Wells Fargo where he's just like 6 over.
Dear God. I don't know. The other thing with Piercy, it's so odd. He's always been an incredible ball striker. Before these 2 tournaments, he had consistently been losing a ton with the irons. Not that that's his normal. That was atypical in a sense. Like, we did not know what was wrong, and it's not hard to imagine. The results during the Florida swing were awful. So you're going to have to sort through it. Ownership will dictate it for me. I'm not getting leverage on like 25 owned. That's not happening.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. And I'm with you on Surrey. Has some pedigree, came back from the injury, 19th, 2nd, 4th, and 20th in his last 4 events on the European Tour. Granted, there were some pretty bad fields. These were not really good European Tour fields, but he's coming back from an injury. He's an American, so that's always a plus.
And he played, I believe I had it. I don't have it in front of me, but he's got some major experience. He's been just fine. Obviously, you can take that for what it's worth. Different courses, different times, but he can handle himself. Is there anybody else? There's my man named Jazz is down here. Don't play him, but shout out to Jazz Janawatanand.
I think I'm going to keep firing on Fratelli.
Oh, yeah. That's the last guy I wanted to talk about. Beautiful.
The ball striking was good last week. No one's going to be on him because he finished T67, but I think he was dead last in the field in strokes gained putting, lost almost 6 strokes putting. And the ball striking, it hasn't been great, but it's been consistent. I think he's gone 4 ShotLink events in a row where he's gaining strokes with the ball striking. So he's gained about 13 strokes over that span, which isn't, blowing the doors off of anything. But I mean, he's a guy we've been tracking. He's I feel like he's underperformed some expectations on the year. So I think he can be better than he has been. And for 6,300, especially at this course where I think there's going to be a premium on the ball striking, he's been consistently good. The finishes haven't been there. He's been making cuts, just kind of been mediocre. But I think people will see a T67 last week in a terrible field that was trashed, but he actually struck it fine and just putted terribly. So I like him at 6,300. I think it's a good event for him. Just putting a premium on ball striking if he puts it a little bit better. And for 6,300, you don't need too much.
Absolutely. And I just want to throw this out here in the sense, if Fratelli didn't come over and he was playing in Europe, I feel like his results easily could be in the Matt Wallace, Biergard, those type of pedigree and form. And we would see him as one of the Euros that we don't know much about, and he would be in the high sixes, low sevens. He decided to come over here, play in tougher events, and he's starting to find some consistency. As we've talked about, it hasn't really worked, but he's making cuts. And last week, I was really heavy on him. It didn't pan out, but he is not an awful putter in general. That was just didn't have it. He gets a change of surface. That can't be bad. And I'm with you. I like the consistent ball striking for him. Played in the PGA last year. I'm with you. And at a unique price point, 6,300, you're not going to find. I mean, now we're getting into John Daly, 6,300. So we're with people who are riding carts. That's hard not to look to him if you need a cheapie.
I want to know how they really came up with the pricing here in the low 6 range, where you have like club pros priced higher than real pros. I mean, like I know Michael Kim is god awful, but he's still better than the club pro from Del Boca Vista Country Club or whatever. So
Vista. Hey, there you go. Yeah, this is God. It's pretty bad. Brandon, just quick shout out. Brandon Stone, forgot he existed. Another South African. God, he was good at one point. We did have Chad ask us, and they asked us about this last week. And the guy, for a little while, I was like, oh my God, Troy Merritt's just going to win the golf. But he did not. Playing all right. He is another extreme cheapie. I'm more apt to go to Fratelli, but man, Tim, I know you like guys who are cooking with the irons. He gained another 6 strokes with the approach last week. Yeah. What do you think about this dude?
That was typical me. Like somebody sharp mentions a player,
and we're like,
I completely shut it down, and then that guy he was cooking for a while there. Yeah, I mean, I think if you need to get down in this price range, the irons have been good. I'll say the same thing I said last week, and even to a bigger extent this week. I don't think this is a great course for him because he doesn't have a ton of length. But down here, there's honestly nothing. I prefer Fratelli, but if you need to go cheaper than that, yeah, I don't think he's a terrible punt. But I don't love him. I just don't think this is a great course for him. But there are a few reasons to play him. But it could be tough sledding for him on a rain-soaked 7,400 yard par 70.
Yeah, I'm with you. And all in all, the amount of times where I'm going to need someone this cheap is minimal. The pricing is soft enough. Unless I do something very aggressive up top, I don't feel the need to reach down here. And with Fratelli, Surrey, Piercy, those types, there's just not that many lineups to go around for a guy like that. Weather waves, we'll talk about that more tomorrow night, me and Jason. But from what I've seen, I'm not factoring it in much. It's going to be rainy, maybe a little windy, but I don't see big splits right now. Man, there are some. I mean, this is the definition of creative players, but don't play the PGA guys, the professionals. You think any of them make the cut if I set it at 0.5?
Yeah, I would go over. I haven't even looked. Like, I guess if you could probably look back at the past PGAs and see
I think usually it's 0 to 1. Like that's I I don't know.
I'll go over. I feel like I recognize some of these names, and it's probably just from past PGA championships. Like, I don't know, Richie Barbarian Jr. That name seems
Yeah,
familiar.
that's a person. He's got a couple of rounds, and yeah,
No, yeah, but definitely don't play any of these guys because, like we said, it's not like they're 5K and the PGA Tour pros are 6K. You're not even getting a discount on these guys. So
no, they're mixed and matched.
yeah,
Last guy, and then we'll get to any bets you might have. Chad asked us about Adam Hadwin, who's someone I don't love the course for him, but he is 6,500. If you want it to be different from Piercy, he has good POA splits. The results, though, just haven't been there pretty much all year. He was good at the Desert Classic early in January. Since then, it's been pretty much nothing. So probably a pass for me.
yeah, no, I don't think I'll get there with Hadwin. The results just haven't been there. I don't think this is a great course for him either.
Yeah. Sorry. Wait till the
So
RBC.
look for Hadwin to just come out and shoot a 63 on
Hadwin
Friday or
Troy
Thursday.
Merritt playoff. Any bets? Did you make any bets yet?
No, not yet. I kind of dropped the ball because it snuck up on me so quickly. Like I said with the Masters, though, it's the majors are really you want to put in these bets. I think you get the most value a couple weeks early. So you really got to be looking ahead. I did that with the Masters. Didn't do it here. I was just looking at some stuff right now. I think right now what I like Stenson at 66 to 1. Um, Again, the approach game's been amazing. And I think Casey at 50 to 1 for just talking about bets that are available now. Um, the guy is, we've said he's kind of turned it around. In his last 7 starts, he has a first, a second, a third, and a fourth, which is really crazy. I think the course should set up well for him. He bounced back at Wells Fargo after just the debacle at Augusta. So I don't love Casey, but I think 50 to 1 is a decent price. I think for a guy who's shown a ton of upside this year and, great ball striker.
No doubt. And we say this time and time again. If it's a debacle, that's no different than if he comes in third. Like if you're betting him outright, that's what you want. You want a guy, and Paul Casey was the opposite. That was the Siwoo Kim blueprint of just like win or withdraw, one of the two. Like, okay, I can live with that. DraftKings, it's a little different. For me, I have not put in any bets in yet. I'm probably going to take a couple of guys in that next tier up in terms of like the Bryson, Decky, range. Yeah, Spieth. That's it. Spieth is like in the 60s, isn't he? I heard at least.
He'd have to be like 150 to 1 before I'd even
top
think
10. About it. Yeah, not for me. I will say, and we're obviously going to have to pick a winner before we get out of here. So I guess I'll just spoil mine right now. I will be betting Ricky because I think Ricky is going to win. I see him around 20 to 1 out there. I'll have to line shop it. But do you have a guy you think that takes it down, or are you just going like very generic like DJ?
Well, yeah, equally generic with Rory.
Rory, fair enough.
His ball, I said this. I did a pod with Davis Maddock and my buddy Ryan Forbes yesterday.
Oh.
Ever since I started doing the ball striking numbers before every tournament, I've never seen anything like what he's done compared to the rest of the tour. I mean, it's just for him to be that much of a better ball striker than anyone else on tour this year.
It's ungodly.
It honestly is ungodly. And I mean, I look at this for every tournament for the past 2 or 3 years. And I mean, he is just the gap between him and second place in striking the ball is amazing. And then I said yesterday, well, maybe the short game is what's been kind of holding him back from winning more often. And then I look, he doesn't have a great short game, but he hasn't around the green and on the green. I think he was, right around tour average. So it's not like
that's all you need when you're right. Like
when I said it, I was expecting, he's going to be 150th in strokes gained putting and 180th around the green. I mean, he's 49th around the green. He's 71st strokes gained putting. I mean, that's pretty good when you're literally the best ball striker that's been on tour in I don't know how long.
I mean, he gains legitimately like 5+ strokes off the tee, and then anywhere from like 2 to 5 with the approaches. If you're doing that, I mean, there was a stretch. Obviously, I've always been a Rory guy. I believe it was during the FedEx Cup where Rory legitimately was losing like 8 strokes putting every single week, and he was coming in like 9th, 12th. Then he corrected that, and now obviously he had his low, and he seems this year to just be firing on all cylinders. The run he's on is just ridiculously impressive. Unlike the Finaus, he's the opposite. The only blip is he didn't show up at the Masters. Everything else, it's ridiculous. In 2019, every traditional event, he's been inside the top 10 except the Masters.
Yeah, and he was T21, which isn't great considering the limited field, but it wasn't like he was terrible either.
Absolutely. So you're never going to tell me that Rory isn't a good idea. We'll see if he's got that. Then he's got the Open in his backyard in Northern Ireland, but that's for another time. Perfect last question. Thoughts on Beau Hossler? Definite pass for me. I can't take his ball. He did play better last week, but I'm not there with his ball striking. I know he's your.
Yeah, I think he actually gained strokes with the ball striking, but got
out of
no
nowhere.
way. This is not a place for guys that are, loose with the ball striking. That are going to kind of spray it all over the place and trying to live with the putter. I know that's kind of like the Snedeker method, and he's actually, I guess, has some decent finishes here, but Hossler's no Snedeker, and you could just see you could just see Hossler just imploding here.
If you're searching for it and you come here, you're going to have a problem. Like if you're not crisp, you will be in the bunker. There is a ton of bunkers guarding these greens, and if you are not careful, you're going to be scrambling literally every hole, and it's just a recipe for it to get away from you. So I'm going to try to be careful with. It's a fine line every week, but especially this week of guys where the stats are a little I'm going to pick my spots very carefully because it's not like, they hang in. Like you'll be 8-10 over if it's hard, and I expect it will be. So word to the wise. Jack with always insightful comments in the Slack. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
It seems to me like the majors, the balanced build is, I think that'll be popular. I mean, that's what I prefer. I don't think you have to play. I don't think you have to start at the top. I mean, guys like Casey, Cantlay, and maybe one of the 9K guys, I think that's a great start. I don't know. I don't think you need to start with Tiger, DJ, or Rory. I think balance builds in these majors, I feel like that's kind of been the way to go recently.
Absolutely. And that's why for me, Ricky types in that 9K range, it's going to be an appealing build. Obviously, we just talked about how good Rory is off the tee and with the irons and everything, and DJ's equally as impressive, and Brooks is just lurking. But man, the opportunity cost of being able to pair a couple guys in that balance build, you're not forced to maybe go to a guy like Scott Piercy if you don't want to. A lot of options. Last thing I'll say is if you're playing in a tournament like the Millie, as always, you might want to leave a little money on the table if you have a common 6, because you're trying to take, it's like now up to almost, I think it's like a third of the pool is to $1 million. It's ridiculous, but you have to plan for that. So if you're adding to 50K, you better have a real dark horse to try to be unique. You're going to have a lot of dupes. So be cognizant of game selection. We'll obviously be in chat and Slack if you have questions on that. Hit the like button on your way out, and let's get through the second major here. It's going to be fun. I'll be back tomorrow night with Jason Roslin. Any questions, you find us on Twitter. Take care, and good luck.